that's not what. Okay, so what is it that you guys see? Do you see, you don't see the right thing. Hang on. I'm sorry. Okay. So now you should see the presentation here. Do you see it as small as I see it?
Yes, if you click on this slideshow, should be good.
I just wanted to, okay. Okay, all right. So welcome everybody to the New York Digital Inclusion Fund Coalition and Planning Framework webinar. So this is our agenda. I'm just doing a quick welcome here. We're going to do the introductions, which you all contributed beautiful slides for, and you can use those to introduce yourselves. And then Mooney Register, who's our coalition's she's our coalition's guru, but she's also our programs manager here at NDIA, is going to be walking us through the entire new guidebook we have, as well as the coalition frameworks, planning and framework information. So let's see here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on introductions. So what I did was I went ahead and uploaded your slides. There are some people who were not able to make it. I apologize. I apologize for that. And I should introduce myself. I'm Vicki Yuki, and I'm with the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. And I'm so glad that this is being recorded because I'm just all over the place this morning. I woke up kind of in a disarray because of what's happening across the pond. And if you don't mind, I would like to just take a minute just to kind of recenter and maybe send some healing and good thoughts over to those people over there that are suffering. And if you don't mind, I'd like to do that. Okay, thank you very much. And if you have anybody that's over there, just know that, we at NDIA are in full support of you. And if there's anything that we could possibly do on our end, please let us know or let me know. And I'll be happy to have a conversation with you about it. So, okay, I feel much better now. Okay, so welcome again to this session. And we'll start with the Capital Region Digital Inclusion Coalition. So here is their slide. And just let me know when you want me to forward. So.
Thanks, Vicki. Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki Brown. I'm with United Way of the Greater Capital Region. I'm presenting these slides. Vicki told us to be creative, and I will admit that I did this at the last minute. So there's a picture of my dog taking a nap on his, that's Archie taking a nap on his toy box. So that's my idea of creativity for this. Not at all related to digital inclusion, but everybody loves a dog photo, I feel like. So anyway, I'm here representing the Capital Region Digital Inclusion Coalition, CRDIG for short. Anne-Marie Lannacy from Can Code Communities, I think, is also on this call. So Anne-Marie, definitely pop in if you want to. We are representing the Capital Region of New York. So that's across several counties: Albany, Columbia, Greene, Rensselaer, Saratoga, Schenectady, Warren, and Washington, all really upstate. We have identified 5 key core partners so far: Can Code Communities, like I mentioned, Anne-Marie is on the call, Capital Region BOCES, us at United Way, the Upper Hudson Library System, and the Workforce Development Institute, which is actually a statewide organization with a pretty strong presence in the Capital Region. if you could advance, Vicki, that'd be great. So the scope for our next 6 months together is to bring together those 5 key partners that I listed, but also create a broader, what we're calling an advisory group of other stakeholders. And the idea is to form a common understanding of the root causes of digital inequities and how they might manifest differently in different contexts in the Capital Region. There are a lot of different communities with different needs, different infrastructure, different opportunities. So part of this activity together is kind of to understand that. As far as strengths, one of the things that we found out in one of our first calls is that everybody that we brought together as part of that 5, that core group of 5 has been doing a lot of great work in this space, but we're not really talking about it. So one of the strengths that we've identified is just simply talking about it and understanding what people have been doing and what their goals are. Again, we think that we have some partners that serve different geographic areas within that large county space. So I think that's a strength that we have. We also found out last week that there are 2 digital inclusion innovation efforts happening in the Capital Region, which is super exciting. It's a different type of work, but I think it's something that'll benefit us in the long run to understand, those activities as well. And then within the REDC, that whole process, they branded the Capital Region as quote unquote Tech Valley. So again, thinking of that broader advisory group and the context and the other partners that we might be able to bring to the table. There are a ton of technology companies and organizations who are based in the Capital Region. So that's, I think, a strength of ours as well. Challenges, I feel like everybody could relate to capacity, right? These days, I think people are stretched sort of thin, and using this collective impact model, we really need all of the partners to be super engaged, and everybody has different challenges at work. So that is something that we see that could be a challenge. I think one of the things that we've talked about so far that's going to be critical to how we work is understanding the landscape of the infrastructure that already exists. So that asset mapping process to try to understand that could be a sort of a lengthy one, but I think it's something that's important to set up our work. And then, I think there might be challenges related to understanding just, exactly what infrastructure already exists and other plans that are in the works, because this work is really fast paced. So yeah, that's our coalition so far. We're having fun so far. So happy to be here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. So we don't have a whole lot of time left in this. We have a lot of time, but I just want to make sure that we kind of understand that. We're just going to go through these a little more quickly. And so thank you very much, though, Nikki. It really does help to hear all this. And we will individually meet with you guys to kind of really get into the meat of everything. So, but thank you. I love that. I'm so excited. I love the dog pic. Okay, so now we've got Finger Lakes.
Hi, I'm Lynn, and both Lynn and Andrea are on the call. So as you can see here, we've outlined our name. One of the things that we have is we already have a coalition with more than 170 participants from a broad range of organizations. Next slide, Vicki, is fine. Thank you. In terms of our mission, overall, we're looking at creating a unified voice to support digital inclusion effort in our region, which others can also kind of align with, because everything is a little bit unstructured at this point. In terms of our project scope under the SMIC grant, we're looking to add 15 underrepresented organizations, kind of from lower income, veterans, the elderly, certainly our rural-based communities. Establish 10 new partners, and we're really looking at kind of embedding digital equity within our member organizations' strategic plans, and what that whole process is going to be and how we can facilitate it, so that once all this money is gone, there's still going to be that commitment moving forward. As we said, our strengths are we're an existing coalition. Some of the challenges, we're in far-flung rural locations. We're in 8 counties covering over 8,000 square miles. Our resources are stretched, and we have variable commitment levels in the different communities. So that's a quick snapshot for us.
Thank you, Lynn. All right, the North Country Digital Inclusion Coalition.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy Del Mastro. I'm the telehealth project manager at AHI, or Adirondack Health Institute. We're located in Glens Falls, Warren County. But my work, we actually partner with Fort Drum Regional Health Planning Organization up in Watertown. Together, we cover 11 counties of the North Country with our partnership. We will be starting this coalition from scratch, so to speak. We have a lot of partners from our telehealth partnership that have shown great interest, but there hasn't been any concrete digital inclusion work. So we're leading the way with that. So we have gauged interest from over 30 individuals, and that's not a exhaustive list of the organizations that want to be involved, but just a few from a wide range of industry, which is nice. You could go to the next slide. That being said, so the North Country Telehealth Partnership, we essentially provide technical assistance for all things telehealth. We work with healthcare partners predominantly, but also community-based organizations. So just to go into like the strengths of creating this coalition, we have strong ties in all 11 counties, which has been great. We've done our initial outreach to partners and other individuals that we didn't have relationships with, and we're really happy to see such great interest. Our first meeting is scheduled for Monday the 28th, so I'll report back on how that goes, but we're really excited. And our telehealth partners, their healthcare, hospitals, behavioral health, smaller practices, primary care, the list goes on and on, but they are all invested in access to healthcare and telehealth. So they're all interested in this work, which is very exciting. We advocate for broadband and all things population health. So I think that's another asset that we hold. So we don't have a mission statement yet. Hopefully we make that on Monday, but so our goals for this grant cycle, we're going to be disseminating 2 surveys, one to our healthcare partners to see what gaps and barriers to telehealth access exist. Obviously, telehealth boomed with COVID, but we still are seeing that some of our partners aren't utilizing telehealth as much as they can. So is it the broadband issue? Is it access to devices? So we're going to hear from them, and then we're also going to deploy a community-based survey for patients, clients, community members to get that voice as well. So obviously we're taking sort of a telehealth approach, but we do want to move beyond just healthcare and see what technical needs exist beyond that. Potential barriers. Our region is very vast. The Adirondack Park is over 6 million acres. That being said, we cover more than just the Adirondack Park. So it's very vast and it's very rural. So that could be a challenge, but I think that having partnerships with so many organizations throughout these counties will help with that. And then scheduling, a lot of our partners are healthcare partners who, of course, during COVID have been stretched very thin. So asking people to join another work group or another meeting on their schedule has been a little tough, but we are excited to have the participation we plan to have. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we've got New York Academy of Medicine.
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, great to meet everybody, see all the different ways that you're able to do this type of innovative work. So I'm here with my colleague, Ilana Kiefer, the acting director of the Center for Healthy Aging at the New York Academy of Medicine. And I'm Mario Urbano, policy associate. So our name, the NYDIF Age-Friendly Neighborhood Digital Inclusion Coalition, draws from our experience with the Age-Friendly Cities initiative that emerged about 15 years ago. New York City was designated the first age-friendly city in the world by the World Health Organization, and NYDIF had played a leading role in that accomplishment. In terms of demographic info, with that brief background, it's probably no surprise that our coalition is focusing on adults age 65 plus in the 5 boroughs of New York City. It's also probably no surprise that there remain significant gaps in digital access, broadband access, technology skills with this population. And the pandemic made this digital inequity painfully obvious, I'd say, as older adults tried to adjust to the upswing in telehealth appointments and all of that. As for partners, we're fortunate to have come into this grant with a bit of a foundation already having been laid. A recent development in the age-friendly timeline that I mentioned emerged when 2 private funders approached us shortly after the emergence of COVID-19 with the goal of convening a series of monthly meetings that would pull together this network of age-friendly neighborhood organizations. So the idea was to get these groups together, share resources, brainstorm innovative ways to address some of the needs for the older adults in their communities, to connect them to critical supports like nutrition, food, social connection, medical and pharmacy appointments. And so these are very small, but pretty damn scrappy grassroots organizations that are largely organized and operated by civically engaged older adults, which is really inspiring. So the bottom line is that we have all these groups to kind of pitch in and to manage the fallout from the pandemic. So yeah, trying to watch time, sorry about that. So let's just hop over to the other slide. Thank you. So just a quick glance over the project scope. It's essentially to strengthen those existing relationships that we have from the age-friendly neighborhoods convening work that we did, to broaden that network to include some new organizations, to find some areas that are in need of some sort of community-based organizational like advocacy work, and also to coordinate that advocacy work with city council, with community boards, with some of the actual levers of power that are here in the city. Hopping over to the strengths, obviously having that established network in place is certainly a strength, and it's very sociodemographically diverse from all 5 boroughs. But our secret weapon, if you want to call it that, is the image map, the interactive map of aging. And this came out of a study that was done after Hurricane Sandy to better understand community resilience after the superstorm. And it provides hundreds of measurements and data points for dozens of categories, from demographics to project population changes, other socioeconomic and health measures. Even further, you're able to examine hundreds of varieties of resources that exist throughout the city. So just very quickly in this one example, in these screenshots, we're looking at the neighborhood of East Harlem, which is where the NYDIF office is located. And you see that in this neighborhood, 47% of older adults live in a home that doesn't even have a computer in it. And you compare that to one neighborhood south, Upper East Side and Carnegie Hill, that number drops all the way down to 4%. So there's some very stark inequities in terms of digital access. So we can use this map to identify specific areas that are lacking in digital. Sorry.
How are you? Can you hear us?
Sorry, I'm getting something through my headphones. Anyway, I'll consider you can still hear me. So we can use this map to identify specific areas that are lacking in these resources and try to plan accordingly. And I'm well over my time. You can check our barriers on the bottom left. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. I know everyone's so excited about their project. It's hard to kind of, okay. We've got the Sunset Park.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brenna Tucker. I'm working on this project with David Giles, both from their Brooklyn Public Library. We are a digital inclusion group focusing specifically on the Sunset Park neighborhood. We have several existing partners as listed on the screen that range from schools to hospitals to business improvement districts. You can go to the next slide. So this coalition actually formed in March 2020, thinking about digital access and inclusion. I think it primarily formed out of a need for information dissemination for healthcare, particularly. And Sunset Park is a unique location. It has a broad range of languages and a very wide gap for digital inclusion. So what we're working on in this coalition is doing a landscape analysis, needs assessment, and starting to think about how this coalition can better work together. So it was put together fairly in an urgent and sort of responsive way, but has a little bit of opportunity to kind of think more long-term now. So recognizing that if, for example, it's 10 steps to fill this gap, are those 10 steps happening? And if they are, could one person navigate all those 10 steps and understand where one organization begins and the other leaves off? So thinking about what this looks like. The strengths is that we have a great group of stakeholders already moving forward, and our challenges, this overall reliance on digital information, and also the need for multilingual communication in this particular region. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Brenna. All right, so the Bronx Digital Equity Coalition sent in 4 or 5 slides, so we're gonna move through these quickly, right, Caroline? Thank you.
A little ambitious, but Carolyn Lewis on with the Bronx Community Foundation, representing the Bronx Digital Equity Coalition. We have, we're serving the Bronx community, and we have over 70 partners that collaborate with us on the coalition. Go to the next slide. The mission of the coalition is to bring together organizations across the borough to collectively address digital inequities and advocate for innovative, sustainable, and community-generated solutions. The coalition came together in 2020 as the foundation brought together community partners to address longstanding digital inequities in the Bronx. And this was compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic. So with this grant, we're hoping to solidify a leadership and governance structure. We're also hoping to set clear goals and objectives for the coalition and have commitment to action. We want to expand the coalition membership to be representative of the community, as well as looking to sustain the coalition with some 2 to 3 years of funding and also some administrative support. Next slide. Some of the strengths and areas of opportunity for the coalition, we've been able to expand our membership from starting from 10 participants to over 70 participants. We're continually sharing best practices and promoting collaboration across the membership, across the coalition. We've advocated for digital equity, particularly for grassroots projects within the Bronx. And we've been amplifying just the work that the coalition has been doing through citywide efforts. Some challenges or areas of opportunities is really around attendance and engagement, engaging all of our members to work together and to attend the meetings, which is challenging when we all have busy schedules. And also just initiating the recruitment and outreach efforts. We're all meeting virtually online, and we find that meeting in person tends to yield better results, but obviously in this climate, it's been challenging just to recruit and do outreach and promote the work of the coalition.
Thank you so much. I had to leave these photos in because they were so cute.
Thank you.
I was just like, maybe I should just, but I just couldn't. I just had to leave them in because they're just so original. Okay.
I appreciate it.
All right, so Don, bring us home.
Sure, I will channel my inner Long Islander and talk fast. So I'm Don Madison. I'm the facilitator for the Western New York Digital Equity Coalition. We serve the 8 counties of Western New York. So that's Allegheny, Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, Erie, Genesee, Niagara, Orleans, and Wyoming. And some of our lead partners include the Healthy Community Alliance and Mission Ignite, but we also have 39 other organizations in the mix that I will not name. or list. So, Vicki, so we can jump to the next one. And we don't really have much of a mission statement. It's not built out. It's kind of really just, we're pursuing digital equity for all Western New Yorkers. That's what we want, who we want it for, and what we're doing about it, pursuing it. So as far as strengths and assets, we were created out of and continue to be connected through regional philanthropy. We grew out of the Western New York COVID-19 Community Response Fund. I work for a private foundation, and I got tapped to lead this because I think I only say this half joking, I missed a meeting. So here I am. And again, we have 40 plus member organizations spanning a whole bunch of sectors: philanthropy, education, private business, community-based organizations, disability advocacy groups, and so forth. And so we also have a number of members with strong advocacy backgrounds, so they're able to help us get those meetings with legislators and regulators so that we can make sure that our agenda is on their radar. Challenges and barriers for us. I mean, I think everybody's pointed a little bit to the irony of having to do digital equity work on Zoom when we're talking about people who don't have digital access. But related to that, it's just getting meaningful beneficiary voice. We have people who serve community members, but the people we most need to hear from aren't usually able to make it to these meetings because they have other things going on. And the other piece of it is, if you think about the list of counties that I ran down, the two big cities there are Buffalo and Niagara Falls. And so they have a center of gravity that makes it hard for other parts of Western New York to feel heard and represented. And what we're trying to do with this particular grant is be a little more assertive about getting the beneficiary voice into our work. We've built in some stipends, and we're in the process of recruiting for about a half dozen community members from across Western New York to help us understand what they're facing, not through a provider lens, a nonprofit provider lens. And then we're also trying to get a better lay of the land in terms of the same sorts of gaps and assets analyses that other people have talked about. We have a few that have already been done, but we're trying to get them all together in one place so that we know where we need to go next. And then we also have some folks working on looking at past legislation that has been introduced or been stuck in committee forever in New York State to see where there might be opportunities, sort of the so-called low-hanging fruit that people are already thinking about to get some quick wins and advance things. So that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Did I miss anybody? I don't think I did. There were a few people that couldn't make it because of school outage. So I guess you guys don't have school this week. I did not know that because in Washington, we have school. So, all right. So now I'm just going to thank you all so much for those introductions. And it's really helped me, and I believe it's helped Mooney Ray, as well as the rest of our team that's on the call, get a really a stronger understanding of what's going on in your coalitions and where you're at. And maybe gives us a better roadmap for how we can move forward throughout the rest of this grant period. So Mooney Ray, I pass it to you now.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, everyone, for providing us with that great introduction on your efforts on building coalition. And I have to say that you guys got all the pieces of the puzzle in New York. It seems like you have coalitions that are working at a neighborhood level, coalitions at a city level, county, and several countywide. So I see a lot of intersection. And it's really exciting to really share some of the learnings that we have collected here at NDIA with you and help you in that process. But I'm also learning from you, right? So I'm really looking forward to really capture some of your guys' efforts and learning this process so we can, do what NDIA does best, which is really collect the information and share with our community nationally. So we at NDIA for the last, 6 months, 8 months, been working on updating a coalition guidebook, and some of you guys came and were part of that conversation. So we had focus groups and we convened. There's around 30 some now coalitions around the country. With you guys going to be some extra. So coalitions are definitely important infrastructure for digital inclusion work. And capturing the lessons learned from the community, we have done several things. One is what you see there on the slide is expanding the VWOC digital inclusion coalitions are. So what the definition that we're working on right now is really that coalition or collective of organizations. So it's an organization of organizations, and they work really right to advocate digital equity and foster the growth of the community's digital inclusion ecosystem. So next slide. So you see highlight digital equity. I'm just gonna go through those real quick because I'm pretty sure you guys know what that means. So digital equity, right, is the condition in all people have the ability to really use technology to the full capacity. And you have the ability and the access to do so. Next slide. And digital inclusion, again, digital equity is the goal, right? And then digital inclusion is the work. What are the different programs that and activities that we do to support that goal? So next slide. And then also on the working definition for coalition, we talk about digital inclusion ecosystem, which is the combination of programs and policies, right, that meet the geographic community needs. So thinking about coalition again, the definition of coalition, right, it's an organization of organizations that do digital inclusion work to achieve digital equity by supporting the digital inclusion ecosystem, and it's all the different processes. So it can be as simple as we want to think about, it can be as complicated as we want to think. But I thought it was important to share this here because coalitions are a fun, exhausting, and rewarding process to really bring, to really empower communities to attract not only more services and resources, but also to make sure that community voice is part of the process and it's part of the solution. So if you go, next slide. So here's one of some of the learnings that we're learning in the process of updating the coalitions. That one, coalitions that most of you guys know, they have a lot more experience than me doing this work, is that coalition is not a point in time. Right now, your coalition is really a development process, and we are all, as you can see, we're all at different stages of development. So full disclosure, I've been working digital inclusion coalitions and programming and policy and infrastructure for digital inclusion for the last 9-10 years, and had the privilege to start a coalition here in Texas and San Antonio, which is where net inclusion is going to be next year. So just saying, you guys get ready, come to San Antonio, Texas, February, enjoy the nice warm weather. But here, so thinking about the learnings that I've experienced personally and learning from the community, be able to highlight that digital inclusion coalitions are a process, and it was very clear to us that right now coalitions have experienced so far 4 major stages of development. So one is it's building partnerships. This coalition always started with a partnership. It might be you or in a couple organizations that highlight the need. 2, right, it's thinking about creating that unified voice and the mission and what, there's a need to come together and work in a more collective manner. Stage 3, what we realize is that when coalitions started moving to actions, like what are some of the work that coalitions do on the ground and how do they structure themselves to do that work? And then 4, what we've learned is that a lot of coalitions that have been functioning for a while, they come to that stage of realignment. We're refining and realigning. It's really reassessing their goals and assessing where the community is at and what are some of the gaps and what roles should the coalition be playing at that moment. And should the coalition sometimes become a 501c3 or stay as a collective process. So we're going to do this workshop in a little bit different than we usually do at NYDIF. So I broke down the presentation and some topics for us to talk about and explore together into those 4 areas of coalition development. We're going to have questions, we're going to have breakout sessions, and after each session, we're going to have time just to ask questions and have a little discussions. So, so feel free to write down your questions, because right after that session, you're gonna have an opportunity to speak and ask questions and be as free as we can on an hour and a half process. So next slide. So stage 1 partnerships, I won't spend a lot of time on this because it seems like most of you guys already established those partnerships, already thought about who should be part of your organization or your coalition and who you are trying to engage. So a lot of thought has been given to that. But so sharing here one of our learnings, I guess some of our learnings on the area is that coalition really starts with the partnership. And sometimes it starts with a partnership on a specific project, right? It's you got a fund opportunity and you have like this one and you apply with several other organizations and I guess projects, right? There's a beginning and an end. That usually tend to be a catalyst that I have learned to really start a coalition and building a robust coalition. So, and then that coalition it's the process of coming together and not an event. And then the individuals and partners are all playing different roles of the puzzle if you can, to make the coalition be as robust as you can possibly be. Next slide. So thinking on this concept, right, of ecosystem and what your goals are for your coalition and so forth, a lot of you guys have shared that already. I want to go ahead and break up in a little group discussion before we go into the more details of coalition building. So you guys can just real quick, like maybe like 5 minutes. Does that work, Vicky? 2 breakout groups. So you have 5-minute group discussion on describe your coalition's digital inclusion, I guess is your community digital inclusion ecosystem, and what role do you think your coalition should play? And more importantly, what role you think your coalition should not play, right? And should not perform in that environment. So a lot of our learnings building a coalition is that, you know, when we build coalitions, everybody's excited and everybody, you know, we want to do a lot. And then sometimes there are coalitions that try to provide, I don't know, programming and be the ones delivering computer and putting computer digital literacy training resources together. And it became very troublesome because the coalition not only didn't have a organizational structure, but also didn't have a defined role. So it became very hard for the members of the coalition that was in the steering committee to keep that service going. So one of the learnings that we capture in the guidebook, and you see shortly, is that most coalitions decide not to do delivery of programs. So the role of coalition was to empower and support the organizations that do program delivery. And then the coalition is really bringing people together and make sure they create that space for collaboration and realignment. So if you guys can get in group and talk a little bit more about your ecosystem and then the role you see the coalition performing, and then we can come back and continue from there.
All right, so I'm just going to open all the rooms, and you've already been assigned already. So 5 minutes, and I'll call you back.
Can you assign me to a room? I didn't click it.
Oh, you're in the room. It says room 2.
Yeah, there's only the 4 of us here. But I didn't click it to join.
I don't know how to do that. Okay, move to room. I'm gonna put you in room 1 then.
That works. Thank you.
Okay, let me share my screen again.
Yeah. Actually, hold on a second. Anybody wants to share anything interesting that you learned or that you want to share in terms of, you know, your digital inclusion ecosystem and the role you see the coalition playing or not playing within that ecosystem?
Muni, I just want to, I think it was Patricia who was in our breakout room who got cut off. I want to give her the opportunity to finish.
Awesome. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Miles. So, so we're kind of new, I would say, to this space. You know, we're working on this innovation grant with 2 other partners that have been integral to the work that we've been doing in terms of digital inclusion. On a broader spectrum, with our partners, we've really recognized what I think some of you have been talking about is how there are so many people, or you know, there's a consensus of people who are working in this space, but often working in silos. We don't always know what everybody else is doing, and I think it's really important to build together partnerships, coalitions, to really identify, you know, who's in what space and who's best at doing what. Because what I'm seeing is that some people are trying to do everything, and by trying to do everything, you know, they're not always reaching the populations that they want to or doing what they need to do well. So it's finding the people who have the real expertise, whether it's in supplying the hardware or doing the training or providing the information, education, all of that. I think it's really important that we find what our roles are in this space and work together.
Yes, thank you, Patricia. Thank you for sharing. And I just learning from you guys and the scope and that your coalition is looking to pursue. I would say that at some point, I would guess that your coalitions are going to reach out to the other coalitions within the Zoom to work together, because I feel like, you know, thinking about digital inclusion coalitions, some coalitions are, I think about everything, and we're working to support broadband expansion, digital literacy, and devices distribution and access. And some of you guys are focused on a particular population, like older adults. And then some of you guys are focused on just in a particular geographic area, right? So I think it's when you put those all into circles, right, you see the commonality, and then how you guys are gonna work together. It's gonna be interesting. Because again, you have a stake that have a robust understanding that this is needed, and there's a lot of work, and you know, resources are now coming down to do this work. So figuring out what role you play, it's definitely one of the big takeaways that I have learned, and also that we coalitions feel sometimes. It's just like, what role you play, establishing those from the beginning, creating that united front and building that shared understanding, with the caveat that at some point you're gonna have to really think a little broader on how you collaborate, not only within your coalition, but outside of your coalition. And having those goals really help to guide that conversation. So Vicki, if you go ahead and share the screen again. So within coalition, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is one of the areas that, right, in the process of building coalition, and to keep in mind is really creating a shared understanding. It's usually the first step, build partnerships. And here you see that some groups, right, is not exhaustive, but it's some of the consistent groups of organizations and people that most coalitions make sure to include in their coalition membership. So, right, health, education, housing institutions, government agencies and officials, philanthropic organization and financial organizations, digital inclusion service providers. So sometimes what I see is that getting a coalition together with digital inclusion service providers only, right? So service providers, we call it, is the organizations that are providing the programs, right? That's delivering the digital literacy training and the computers, or helping people access the affordable options, or, you know, connect to broadband. What this group it's really heavy center on it's your powerhouse, and it's the people that serving those communities and understand some of the challenges that's going on in getting those communities connected. One of the challenges that I personally see is that when a coalition only have service providers, right? So you need to build a coalition and to have impact sometimes, depending on your scope, you will also want to affect policy. You also want to get more funding. You also want to bring those lived experts to the table, like Dom was talking about, right? The people that are living and bringing them to the table. You know, building a coalition is really, you think about it, it's an organization. And I feel coalitions is particularly hard because you're helping build an organization while you're serving an organization that's supporting this collective effort. And then you are helping build the organization and deliver services at the same time. So like figuring out like when you are in the coalition, what role do you play in this collective space, you know, representing your organization, and what role do you play as an organization that's providing services? So you really do have to balance those out. And because one of the challenges that I've seen is that one organization is like the backbone or is the convener, and they do delivery the services and they build a coalition. And then sometimes the community cannot see the difference, right? So this is the coalition, it belongs to this organization, right? So, and then it becomes very difficult for other organizations sometimes to engage, because you have established such a strong ownership and presence within the coalition that it doesn't allow for other organizations and even community members sometimes to feel comfortable or to engage or to play a role. So, you know, think about this collective vision from the start, and coalition, do as much as you can to say, hey, I work on this organization and I'm in this other organization, we're together to create this coalition. It's a collective space that every organization has a role to play. You know, making sure that you're drilling on that, it's really important. And then, yeah, so next slide. So on stage 2, here's when we're gonna get some of the nitty-gritty on coalition building, which is, I know, it's really, this is the process that we have identified. That's when the coalition really bring people to identify and then to build a collective goal, effort, and the share understanding. So one, you know, like outreach, again, don't do it alone. It's very critical. Like, don't brand the coalition as your particular organization, because you're really going to create another silo within the system. Align your partners and support. So see, you need organization and people that have convening power, and you need organizations that have space or a Zoom room to support the coalition and coming together, right? So really looking at aligning your partners to really launch and support the coalition is critical, and especially in the beginning stage. And that can happen in a small group first before you do a community convening, right? So sometimes it's a small group of people coming together and meeting and thinking through some of those stuff before they present to the bigger community. But it is an effort of convening. It's a very much integral part of coalition. It's really providing this space for organizations to come together and collaborate. And then, you know, establish your commitment for inclusion and racial justice. So what we have learned over like so much so is that, you know, if we don't call it what it is, it's very hard to address it. And coalitions that have been doing this work for a while, you know, like the Portland Coalition, you know, they talk about that very openly. Like, you know, they realize that everybody at the table and then all their meetings and all their space, it was really like, there was no person of color. There is no, the meetings was not held in a way that people could easily access. The information was not readily available. So and then opportunities for people and organizations to have our leadership role or participate in a specific project or an effort was very limited. So they're realizing that, and now they're looking to, it's like, hey, what can we do to change to make sure that inclusion and racial justice is part of this? Because, you know, they could tell that was a very, I guess, not a very inclusive setting that they had at the time. And then at this stage, really defining your goals and in the roles. So next slide. Here's a quick example, and I said I serve in the San Antonio Digital Inclusion Coalition, right? Most of you guys already have a mission. Some of you guys are working on a mission, and on the starting phase, just coming up, you know, Lynn, I learned so much every time she's in a space and she shares, right? Like coming up with a mission and a vision that's like as simple as can be, right? As broad as can be to allow for flexibility for how the coalition is acting, right? It is important. And then, so our coalition at the time, right, we create guiding principles and also a vision, but you don't have to do that. But here's what I'm trying to share is that creating that, that identity, it's very important in the beginning. So one couple tips is that, again, have small groups, have a small group of people. Don't do it alone, but also don't need to, I had a coworker to say, you don't need to convene United Nations for everything. And that's one of the challenges with big coalitions, is that it's so big that people want to play a role and do work, but it's so big that you can't manage the amount of work. And then people get discouraged and lose enthusiasm and stop attending coalition meeting because they just meet and talk and then they want to do stuff, right? And again, most of those organizations that are serving, they're doing hard work and resources are limited. So making sure that, like, think about going smaller when you're trying to develop something or work on some areas. So like building a mission, right? I think Nancy, you mentioned that you guys gonna do that part. So maybe it's like do some work up front and present people and present something so the entire coalition can react to. The fact that coalitions can be very big and then just like, oh, let's all sit down and decide what's gonna look like. It can take forever. So think about doing that in small group, and it's just a starting point. So let's react and change. And be mindful where and when you host your meetings, right? For participation, who is going to be part of your coalition? Are you going to have over Zoom? Is that the best situation? You're going to have during business hours or after business hours? You're going to have during lunchtime? Be intentional about inclusivity, to be inclusive, because when we are not intentional about being inclusive, we by default are, become exclusive. So keep that in mind. And then the communication, right? So one of the challenges, again, because you guys are wearing the two hats of your organization and a coalition organization. Remember, their coalition is a separate organization, and your organization, you are part of the backbone, but it doesn't belong, right? If it's a community coalition, part of the definition is a community-based organization, collective organization, is that when you communicate in name of the coalition, when in the beginning, it's fine, right? I'm using my personal email or my work email to send out stuff for the coalition. But at some point, part of creating the identity, I would highly encourage creating an email, right, for the coalition, and let people know, like, hey, this is so-and-so with this organization, and then the email is the coalition. So you want to create that identity and, a brand for your coalition that's not necessarily so attached to your own organization. And then here we kind of try to create a logo. So we have a logo and we have the email that the people that are part of the steering committee or the backbone have access to that information, but it is almost like a neutral zone. Next slide. So here are some of the layers that we have discovered in the process of building coalitions. That understand the coalition, like I know a lot of you guys talked about, right? There's different levels of commitment within the coalition, and understanding those really gonna help you guys in the long run. So one is really your focal point. Who are the people you're trying to serve, and who are the organizations? What's the geographic area you're trying to impact? Again, I think you guys, my suggestion for you guys is really come up with a measure that's across the board so you can see how you interlock. So maybe all of your coalitions, and that's what NDIA is doing too, like what's the map? What's the reach? What's the geographic area you're trying to impact? I know some of you guys are worked on specific on programs, right? Or area digital inclusion and people, right? You try and target population, but like think about the geographic area, because some of your coalitions are definitely, overlapping. And then you guys need to figure out how, your both coalitions are part of the ecosystem, how we support each other and how we work together. So understand that what's your focal point. There's member level, right? Is your knowledge powerhouse. Those are the, digital inclusion service providers. They are the government agencies, the funders, people that do know digital inclusion work, but also people that don't know digital inclusion work, but know how collective impact organizations could work. And or people that really wants to learn and support. So this is where you go to convene and share, and that's in the more like of a community level, and who are, how you can leverage their resources and collectively act. The third level that we have identified, right? It's a task force, is the teamwork. So it's really a group within your membership. So some of you guys have 70, 100, 10, 5 members of your coalition. So when you're trying to do some work, what that looks like. And then you have a steering committee, that's your leadership structure, like it's a smaller subset of the coalition that does some work, that oversee the coalition strategic planning and make sure call the meetings and all the administrative tasks. And then backbone support, which is a critical, who are the organization, who are your backbone right now? Like I'm assuming your organizations right now are part of the backbone support, but you can have backbone organizations. Who is your fiscal sponsor? Who is your convener? What other, who is your funder? So they're all part of your backbone support. Next slide. So stage 3 is action. So, thinking about what are some of the activities and resources and the infrastructure necessary for your coalition to actually achieve your goals, right? So thinking about what is the structure that we want to set up to, to do asset mapping, right? So maybe it's convening a subset of your coalition to come together in a group and like, hey, let's talk about what's our ecosystem look like and how do we do mapping assessment. So that might be a good structure for that particular effort, but then you might need a different structure to secure funding, right? So you might need, hire a consultant or somebody needs to be leading the effort. It might be in a group setting, might be individually. So a structure matter. And then I feel like this is the part that coalitions constantly change. And that's the beauty of coalitions and also the challenge of coalitions, that they structure changing a lot because depending on your project and depending on the particular effort, different structure is going to be necessary. Next slide. So here's how all comes together. And again, this is just a model of our structure for coalition. Is not every coalition has this structure, but this model. I try to include all the different components of coalition structure. So some coalition only have a leadership by the red circle, and they are a smaller group that convene people and have a meeting and share resources and then go out, right? So then understanding that the most robust coalition that have all the different layers, I guess not most robust, like some coalitions has all the different layers that understand that within the community, within a geographic area, there are some people that are part of the collective. And within the white circle inside of the community, the work on the coalition happens in smaller groups and task force and subcommittees and, smaller, efforts that look at, there's a beginning and end. And that's important too, because other coalitions that have created subgroups that went on forever, right? So education, so goes on and on and on forever. Again, you lose interest, you lose membership participation if it's something that never ends, right? So giving like, hey, we're gonna create a task force, a subcommittee, whatever you wanna call it, to create a digital equity plan, right? So, or we're gonna create a group to map all the digital literacy organization and resources in our community, who wants to be part of it. So that's usually how the work gets done. Again, you have the leadership group. It's a smaller group that sometimes it's elected, sometimes it's just people that come together in the beginning, end up being part of the leadership. I think is important here is that moving forward, coalitions that you want, make sure that you're inclusive and you're giving people the opportunity to be part, right, of that leadership structure. And then we already talked a little bit about the backbone support. So is the organization that empowers the coalition by providing resources and skills. Next. I won't go through this, but this is just some examples of how members, steering committee, backbone, some of the activities, how they help the coalition and how they function within the coalition. We will provide the slides to you guys so you guys can look at that, because I know we're pressing for time. Next. Do you think I feel like you guys, we already did that too as well, right? Talked about the members who should be at the table, how you start engaging them. I think you guys are beyond that, those discussions. Next. And this is the final area of coalition building that I want to share with you guys today, is that whatever you do is always up for discussion in coalition. You know, there's things change, and then, you know, you might not have this position moving forward, right? You might move to a different organization, a different position, and that has an impact in the coalition. So thinking about that to a personal standpoint, and how's that going to impact the coalition development, how you build the coalition to be sustainable, is also part of, I guess, all the process, but it definitely part of refinement and realignment of the coalition. So reviewing your coalition goals, it's like the goals we had was just to serve this one street, but we noticed that this other street next, right, doesn't have any resource. So do we review our goal to include that or not, right? Based on really the needs and what's going on in the community. Securing resources and internal capacity. That's a big one for coalition, right? Most of coalitions are volunteers, right? Members from other organizations are volunteering, and it's a lot of work. So thinking about that and securing funding. Some of you guys are already, you know, getting funding to have a paid position for that, and formalize your backbone support. Again, are you a convener? Like, what's the relationship of your organization within the coalition, and really try to write those things down. And, you know, sometimes we call it a charter or just a guiding document, just simple bullet points. Here's our mission. Here we are. Here are many people we want to be serving, and the steering committee as a leadership, how we're going to select them. And here are 3 goals: raise awareness, share resources, and build a digital equity plan. So it can be just a simple thing, a one-pager that creates the identity and kind of formalizes this process. And yeah, so next slide. I think, make sure. Here's just the other view, right? Remember, it's a process. We're all in different stages, and there's a lot more to that process that we are sharing here. And next slide. And this is the last one, and I want to stop and just have a group discussion and conversations. So this is another way to see the organization structure. One of the part that's, again, it's difficult about coalitions, that you building an organization while you're trying to do the work. So you're flying a plane and building at the same time. And sometimes, you know, you will fly so fast and the wings are not strong enough. You know, eventually you're going to have to make the wings strong. So you're going to have to pause and build the organization capacity and the structure. So I'll leave at that. And so you see there, the pyramid is not a hierarchical thing. It's just in terms of layers of the organization structure, and then the number of people like you. There's always more people at the community level and the backbone. And then you have like a lot of members, but the work, who's going to be doing the work, is not going to be all the membership, it's going to be the smaller group. And the steering committee is always like a smaller subset of that. So with that, I will let you stop sharing and stop talking and hear where you guys, your thoughts are. And I'm sorry, it always takes longer than I think it would.
Thank you so much, Mooney, right? That was amazing. It's just a lot to cover. And I would just love to hear some of your thoughts, or if you have any questions that we could maybe focus in on in the last, we have about 10 minutes left.
I love how we get overwhelmed with this. So feel free to share, but we are going to have office hours and we are going to be meeting with you guys and talking about specific to your coalition. But I really would love to hear from you. You know, it's a lot. Should I change? Should I make it shorter? Does anything that you learned that you found it interesting, or some things that you agree with and you have experienced?
I have a question if no one else does. It may be for you, Mooney Ray, though, but it may be helpful for everyone. You explained that convenings were a big part of this. What are some barriers that people might experience, or if anyone here has some barriers, what advice can you give to others who are going to have to convene people? Any barriers you've experienced or good ideas for planning convenings? And I throw that out to Mooney Ray or anyone else.
Thank you. You guys, if you guys want to share, and then some of you guys share about the meeting, right? Meeting on Zoom during this time of COVID.
And also, what are some ideas for how to disrupt those barriers, like how to bring them down?
So I know that pre-COVID, when we did 2 of our big gatherings, kind of our initial kickoff meeting, and then we did a conference. Because we're covering such a wide geographic area, a thing that we had to consider was what was kind of in the middle, and finding the middle ground. And that may be, if you're not covering a wide area, it may be, transportation was also a thing that we had to think about. What could people get to? And I think it may be worth looking into now. Knock on wood, maybe as it gets a little closer, we can think about maybe doing in person more, but offering the hybrid model, which is a lot more work on an organizing per side. But I can take that we're doing that here in put on my work hat. And people like it, not even just because of COVID safety precautions, but sometimes you just can't get away for the travel time on either end. You can give up the time of the meeting, but you can't give up all the other time that you would lose. So I think those are things to think about.
Yeah, and I think also thinking about the meeting, right? What's going to be the focus of the meeting, and prioritizing the people and the organizations that you think should be there, or and do what you can to cater to that reality and to that project, right? And one of the things that I know coalition building is, for a fact, like everything else, really, it's relationship building. So for us, moving to a virtual setting, it was very difficult because we always meeting in person, and we created that friendship, right? And the trust. So it's easier for me to trust somebody that I see face to face and I have a relationship, and then we do this small talk between and after the meeting, than in a Zoom. So, but other coalitions really thrive, and then participation went up when it was strictly to the Zoom. Patricia, you want to share something?
Well, I was just going to say this is extremely helpful, and it's interesting because I was at the conference last week, and then this morning I was at a county executive breakfast where there were a lot of county and local corporate executives. And we were talking about digital inclusion. And one of the things we talked about actually is putting together a coalition like this. So this is very timely. As I was saying before, we're new in doing a partnership for digital inclusion through this grant. And we're learning a lot in that process. Fortunately, they are with partners that we've worked with a long time, and we have a very strong relationship with them. But, as I said, we're learning that there are other people in this space. We're not all talking to each other, and it's really important to break down those silos. So I just thank you for this kind of template here. It's really, and even as we're talking, I've been getting emails from some of the folks at this morning's breakfast saying, yes, let's put together a group. Let's put together a steering committee. Let's start this conversation on a broader landscape and really, have greater impact. And really, let's all work together, because we can't do it alone. We've got to work together.
Thanks, Patricia. And Mario?
Yeah, if I could just chime in, I'm going to drop into the chat box a link to a fact sheet series that we did here at the Center for Healthy Aging. And this was specifically geared towards those age-friendly neighborhood organizations that I had spoken very quickly about. And it's a series of 3 guides to help build some really good habits for productive meetings, for project management, just running very productive in-person and remote events. But also there's information on building inclusive and accessible digital meetings. So just another resource that you can throw into your portfolio if you're having any difficulties with this type of stuff.
Yes, awesome. I love that. And yeah, I will definitely use that as well. Thank you for sharing. And I was just thinking one thing for the coalition meetings, bringing back to your question, one thing that we found very helpful is also remember who has convening power, right? And maybe me as an immigrant from Brazil calling people to meet and have a, might not carry a lot of weight. But then if I got the city council or a foundation or even your organization to send out the email, to make the call and then be there just to give the welcome, right? Or just to share a few thoughts, people will come. And then again, once people are there and they realize that this issue affects them and the work that they care about, it's much easier to build a coalition, to keep going, especially, and find people to help you guys do this work, because it's a lot of work. And so don't do it alone. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, resources? Did you guys, I guess, does everybody found this helpful, or you already kind of, it was, because sometimes when we were quiet, I don't know, like, oh, I totally missed it, so, but yeah, I
found it very helpful, and I'm glad that you're going to share the deck, because I definitely want to share it all with our coalition. The way that you put it together visually is really easy to digest. So thank you.
And we're really excited. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be launching the the coalition guidebook. So there will be an actual document, PDF, that you'll be able to access from our website. And so that'll also, this will be a really good companion to that. You'll be able to kind of get more in depth when you see the guidebook. I also wanted to share, just kind of touch here on the last 5 minutes we've got, Mario, if you could share the link in our Slack channel, that would be really great. I think that would be really useful, because a lot of times once we leave these chats, we don't have access to them. And so I just love the idea of having our Slack going. And if you aren't part of the Slack, please join the Slack. I'm also going to be putting a couple of links in there for like our roster and other things, so that everyone has a better understanding of each other. And so again, that's where I'll be posting the slide deck. I'll post a recording there, and mostly under the general, the general one. I kind of tried to keep the other ones more specific to each organization, each coalition, so that when we have conversations, it doesn't necessarily notify everybody. And I want to also encourage you, we do have office hours. So I do have office hours set aside on Tuesdays. Tuesdays from noon to 2. I have to always do the time change thing on Tuesdays from 9 to 2. And the way that we'd like to structure them is if you could reach out to me if you have questions, or if you want to have a conversation, if you want to have Mooney Ray in the room, what it is that you're interested in talking about. And I would love to be able to triage that and make sure that we got the right people in our conversation. I think and so if you could send me those kinds of things in the Slack, I'd appreciate it. I don't know about you, but my email is like always bombarded with stuff. And so it does help me to have kind of a centralized place to do this kind of stuff. And then one other thing is I did get notification. Have you all received your contracts and grants? If you could raise your hand if you have received your contract. Okay, I see a lot of no head shaking. So I did talk to Nuha. I chatted with him, and he wanted me to reach out to you to let you know that some have received their contracts and checks. They did send them all at the same time. Takes about 10 to 15 days. So if you have any concerns about that, you know, please reach out to Nuha and speak directly with him. He's trying to be very flexible, you know, about the contract terms and everything. It's just, John's nodding his head like, yeah, I work for a foundation. So, you know, and we all appreciate it. And this is what's really driving our, you know, giving us the fuel to be able to drive our work. And so, but we also understand that, you know, it's already hitting March. And so, but you've got a lot of really exciting things. Good luck on the Mondays, convening. I'm looking forward to hearing about that some more. And so maybe share some of your experiences from that within the Slack under general or random, whichever. But I think everybody would love to hear the efforts and the work that's going on amongst the different coalition members, coalition groups.
Hey guys, I know there's a lot of resources coming down the pipeline. So we're putting a coalition working group together. We're revamping nationally. So you guys are going to be invited to be part of that group as well. And we're working on an asset mapping tool to share with communities, and especially for coalitions to really map their ecosystem. And obviously the new guidebook is coming up. So there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline, and we're excited that you guys are part of the circle. So we're happy to connect.
Yes, so please do put, you know, post. Oh yes, Patricia, did you have something?
Yeah, can I just ask for clarification? You mentioned something about Monday. I'm not sure I'm clear what Monday is.
Nancy Del Mastro shared within her introduction that they're hosting a convening. They're convening on Monday and the 28th. And so I was like, oh yeah, go ahead and share, you know, with the group how that went. You know?
Yeah, take pictures of the Zoom or whatever it is. We always need good pictures of coalitions coming together. So I love to see pictures, even if it's pictures of Zoom and dogs. I'm always yeah.
Do we have another web meeting, Zoom meeting tomorrow as well?
Yes, there is a so the innovation grantees, there are 5 of those, and they we're having a webinar for them on digital inclusion, digital inclusion tomorrow. And so that's at the same time as this one. If you want to attend that, you're more than welcome to. I did put the link to the registration in the chat. If you're able to join, you're more than welcome to join. I won't make you do a slide deck introduction. You know, I'm making them do one, but they, you know, you guys don't have to do.
I just finished it. I will be there tomorrow because I am part of that group, and I just was a little confused which group I really belong to. So
oh, okay, yeah,
I was a little lost today.
Excellent. So yes, if you are interested, there is another session tomorrow. And then I know that we're right at time, and I just want you to know that we are looking to kind of maybe do a couple more you know, quick sessions, if that's helpful on I'm just offering that up there, you know, quick sessions that might be specifically on a certain stage. If you want to talk about a certain stage or certain structure, you know, that's something that, so please, the more conversation I hear on Slack and on one-on-one, that will drive that. So if there isn't a lot of if there's not a lot of interest, then we're not going to do one. So, you know, just keep that in mind. So, does Mooney Ray, do you have anything to add? Does anybody else have any questions?
No, thank you guys for being so patient and participating. I'm really looking forward to learning from you.
I'm so excited. I'm really excited. I always get excited at the end of these. Okay, so I wish you a happy weekend and apparently a happy school break if you are on school break and you took a break from your break to come here. And again, you know, thank you very much for participating, and we'll see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.